धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। गंगामाई यमुनामाई की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
Deepo.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada.
Deepo.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Greetings from Sri Mayapur. Good morning in Philadelphia. Thank you for joining our Srimad Bhagavatam class. We continue our study. Today's verse is the third canto, second chapter, verse 19. It goes like this. Drishta bhavadbhir nanu rajasuye chaidyasa krishnam divishato pisiddhihi yam yogina sprhayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta. Drishta bhavadbhir nanu rajasuye chaidyasya krishnam divishato pisiddhihi yam yogina sprhayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta. Drishta bhavadbhir nanu rajasuye chaidyasya krishnam divishito pisiddhihi yam yogina hayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Drishta bhavadbhirnanurajasuye chaidasya krishnam dvisatopi siddhi yam yogina samspriyanti samya yogena kaschad viraham saheta. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Drashta bhavadir nanurajashuye chaidashaya krishnam dishato viyasiddhi yam jagina samspranti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Drishta bhavadbhir nanu rajasuye yasya krishnam visato hapi siddhihi yam yogina samsrihayanti samyag yogena kastad virham saheta. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Drishta bhavadvir nanurajasuye chaidasya krishnam drishta apisiddhi yam yogina sprayanti samyag yogena kashat viraham saheta.
Anyone else?
दृष्टा भवद्भिर् ननुराजसूये चैद्यस्य कृष्णं द्विशतपि सिद्धि Yam yogina samsprahayanti samyag yogena kastad viraham saheta.
Anyone else? Okay. Drishta, it has been seen. Bhavadbihi, by your good self. Nanu, of course. Rajasuye, in the assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira. Chaidyasya, of the king of Chedi, also known as Shishupala. Krishnam, unto Krishna. Dvishataha, envying. Api, in spite of. Siddhi, success. Yam, which. Yoginaha, of yogis. Samsprihayanti, verily desire. Samyak, fully. Yogena, by performance of yoga. Kaha, who. Tat, his. Viraham, separation. Saheta, can tolerate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, by Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupala, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? Referring to Krishna, of course, not Shishupala. Purport. Lord Krishna's causeless mercy was exhibited in the great assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was merciful even to his enemy, the king of Chedi, who always tried to be an envious rival of the Lord. Because it is not possible to be a bona fide rival of the Lord, the king of Chedi was extremely malicious toward Lord Krishna. In this, he was like many other asuras, such as Kamsa and Jarasandha. In the open assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, Shishupal insulted Lord Krishna, and he was finally killed by the Lord. But it was seen by everyone in the assembly that a light flashed out of the body of the king of Chedi and merged into the body of Lord Krishna. This means that Chedi Raj achieved the salvation of attaining oneness with the Supreme, which is a perfection most desired by the jnanis and yogis, and for which they execute their different types of transcendental activities. It is a fact that persons who are trying to understand the supreme truth by their personal endeavors of mental speculation or mystic powers of yoga achieve the same goal as others who are personally killed by the Lord. Both achieve the salvation of merging in the Brahmajyoti rays of the transcendental body of the Lord. The Lord was merciful even to his enemy, and the success of the king of Chedi was observed by everyone who was present in the assembly. Vidura was also present there, and therefore Uddhava referred this incident to his memory. Translation again. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupala, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various practices. Who can tolerate separation from him? Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityamane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Charna Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Kshatra Deshatana Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Again, welcome. So today's verse, as all Bhagavatam verses are it's quite interesting. So Uddhava, of course, is talking to Vidura. And what Uddhava is saying to Vidura is, how could you not fall in love with someone who grants the high benefits even to their enemies? Right? How could you not? The person is so merciful that even those who are envious of him, he gives very high benefit. Not the highest benefit, of course, but very high benefit. The highest benefit you could imagine in the material world anyway, right? And having attained that love, right? Who can tolerate to be in his absence for even a moment? This is what Uddhava is explaining to Vidura. So first of all, how could you not fall in love with him? And second of all, when you do fall in love with him, how can you tolerate even a moment of separation? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So to start out, I'll say that we each have had some shadow of this type of experience in the material world, where we become infatuated with either someone or something, even some sort of idea for some. And our every waking moment, and even some in our sleeping moment, because we're meditating on it, and so we're dreaming about whatever it is we're infatuated with, is just completely absorbed in that object. Again, it could be a person, it could be an activity, it could be an idea, but something that we've all at some point, usually when we're teenagers, we become obsessed with. We just want to spend all our time doing a particular thing or spending time with a particular person. So, and this is all we want to do. Like, you know, there are these, they're sort of like, well, no, I don't want to use that term. There are these adages that people repeat, and it can refer to any activity. So they say, eat, sleep, and you know, all this, and then whatever it is. It could be a sport, it could be a whatever, but it's you know, that's all you do, that's all you think about. That's what life is, right? And so we've all had some sort of experience of this. If we haven't, we've at least observed it for sure. But I think most of us have had some sort of obsession, again, whether it's with a person or an activity or an idea, that we just become completely absorbed in it. And all we want to do is spend time absorbed in that. And then, especially when we're teenagers, of course, we can't spend all of our time with the object of our obsession. And so when we can't, we're counting the seconds until we can be reunited, right, with whatever it is, person, idea, activity. Just the thought of being separate from or without it is painful, right? So we have this idea. And we have to keep in mind that that obsession that we've either experienced or observed, it's just something material, right? Something that we gave all of the value in the world to. We said, this is the most important thing to me, right? So we've given all of the value that we place in this world to one specific thing. The problem with that is that all of the value in this world only belongs to Krishna, right? He's Bhagavan. He possesses all opulences. So he is all of the value, right? And even when he gives his value away to others to share, he still has all of the value. He's always complete. We learn this from Sri Upanishad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. He's completely perfect. And even though so many complete and perfect things expand from him, he remains complete in himself. In absolute mathematics, 1 minus 1 still equals 1, right? He's the Supreme Lord. He's completely full. He never diminishes when he expands himself, right? And so, since all value belongs to him, he's really the only thing that we should have that sort of absorption in, that we should give all of the value that we know and to him, right? So when we finally actually realize this fact that since he actually is the source of everything and he is all of the value in this world, as soon as we finally realize it or remember it, when we actually experience it, right, when we understand that relationship, then there will be no question of tolerating any sort of separation from him. It'll be absolutely impossible, right? So one at this point might say, well, Carucandra, I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for a long time now, and I know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and at least in theory, I put all value, I understand that everything valuable comes from him. And I mean, the separation is there and I'm tolerating it. It's not like I'm obsessed with Krishna that, that I have to at every moment be thinking of him. And that's a good point. Because the thing is, right now, here in the material world, we're actually demanding separation from him. It's not that there's some separation and we have to somehow tolerate it. No, no, no. We actually asked for it, right? We demanded this separation. That's why we're here in the material world. If we didn't have this illusion of separation, then our notion or our idea that we could become independent controllers and enjoyers, it goes completely out the window, right? It's not even a contest. If we actually understood the relationship, who Krishna is, who we are, there wouldn't even be any sort of idea that we could be independent controllers because he's the whole, right? It's like we were talking a couple of weeks ago about a watch and it has all these different gears. And so it's kind of like a gear, jumping out of the watch and then thinking that it can perform all of the functions of the watch on its own. It has no value. But when it engages actually in the mechanism of the watch, then it is useful. Right? So it's not even a contest. If we actually know the relationship, who Krishna is, who we are, there's not even a slight notion that we could actually be controllers or enjoyers independently of anything, right? And any comparison that we can possibly dream of, including the watch one that I just gave, it still doesn't even show how ridiculous the idea is. And I'll give a few examples. So sometimes when we talk about this idea, we try to give an example because you give examples and then it's easier to at least understand the concept, right? So I'm going to give a couple examples and then show how they're absolutely ridiculous in trying to actually fully understand what's going on here. So say, for example, you take the last place Little League team in the world, and I'm not talking about like the last place of the world champion Little League teams. I'm talking about you go to, some town in the middle of nowhere where there's basically kids they just started walking and they're playing. They don't even know the rules. It doesn't matter. They're having fun, but they're there. They're on a baseball diamond. They have the bats, they have the balls, they have the gloves, the bases are there. Everything is there. Like I said, some of them don't even know the rules. So they hit the ball. They see that their mom just opened the snack. So instead of running to the base, they run to the bench because they're hungry. Or someone picks up the ball and he's so excited and he's showing everybody and they're like, no, you have to throw it to get the person out. It's, it's not okay that you just got it. So you get those guys, right? The absolute worst set, the Little League team that ever existed. and you put them up against the New York Yankees, right? Obviously, the kids don't have a chance, no chance whatsoever, right? Or I'll give one more example. Also involves a toddler. Uh, he just learned how to walk, and he got a little bicycle with training wheels, right? And so the kid, he's on the, he gets on the bike and he doesn't understand the concept even. The pedals seem to be in the way because he's used to his feet and he wants to kind of scoot it, but like the pedals are there and like someone's trying to explain. So that kid on that bicycle with training wheels against there's this thing that's called an attack. It's the world's fastest motorcycle. It goes 394 miles an hour. So toddler on a bicycle with training wheels that probably couldn't even walk on his own against the world's fastest motorcycle. No contest, right? Now, the reason why it's ridiculous to try to give this sort of comparison is that even though we can understand that there's no chance, like there's no way that the little kid on the training wheel bicycle can beat the world's fastest motorcycle, nor is the world's worst little league team going to be able to beat the New York Yankees. But when we compare this to what we're actually, trying to compare it to, because we're trying to get an idea of how ridiculous it is to try to think that we can become independent enjoyers. But the problem with this, and the reason why it's so ridiculous, is that this world's fastest motorcycle, the Yak Attack and the New York Yankees, they're even less than the toddler and the world's worst team when you actually compare it to Krishna. The problem with giving an example like this is when these little kids are playing against the Yankees, you can see how much better. You can actually quantify it, right? Or let's use the one with the bicycle. Little kid on the bicycle is going 0 miles an hour. The motorcycle is going 394 miles an hour. So you can quantify it. It's 394 more miles an hour than the other one, right? You can quantify that. When we compare ourselves to Krishna, you can't quantify that because we are infinitesimal, which means so small that you cannot even place a value on it. And Krishna is infinite, means he's everything, including us, right? We're actually included in him. So to try to make that comparison, although it shows us, okay, yeah, there's no way that the little kid, the toddler on a training wheel bicycle is going to beat this motorcycle. It gives an idea, but it doesn't give the full idea, because not only is there no possible chance, but it's just so much deeper than that. So in these examples, right. Anyway, so we understand that there's absolutely no contest, but there's not even a glimmer of comparison, right? And this is, of course, if we're competing with Krishna, because we're talking about control here. We think, we're here in the material world because we want to control and enjoy independently from Krishna. So as long as we're competing with him, there's absolutely no possibility that we can be in control. But, and this is where it gets interesting, is when unalloyed devotees are lovingly and purely engaged in his service, he is actually conquered, right? Not by competition, but by love. And again, this word engaged comes up, right? Those who are fully engaged. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Since we are part of him, if we are engaged properly, we're useful. If we're not, so if we are properly engaged, we're actually doing something. We're properly engaged. And if we are doing it with love, then we can actually have some control over the Supreme Lord if it's pure. If we're not engaged, not only we only have the illusion of control, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about this concept phenomenon, because it's super interesting and quite beautiful. that Krishna comes under the control of his pure devotees occasionally. So many of us, so we talked about earlier how we all have some sort of idea of becoming infatuated with someone or something in this material world. And many of us also experience a very small glimmer, reflection of this sort of compassion that Krishna has for us, that Krishna has for his pure devotees, when he is conquered by them. So we see Mother Yashoda, for example. Of course, it took a lot to get there, but eventually he was conquered by her love, and he was bound by her. So in this material world, to some minute extent, we have seen examples of someone who is defeated by affection, right? Not by competition, but by affection. I'm going to give an example. When I was in junior high school, I was on the track and field team. And there was this other kid on the track and field team. He was a special needs kid. He very much loved running and jumping. He didn't care that he wasn't fast or he couldn't jump far. He just really loved being on the team. He loved running. He wasn't fast enough in any event to even qualify, let alone get any points. He couldn't jump far enough to qualify, let alone get any points. But he was super enthusiastic always. It never bothered him that he was never even close to qualifying, right? Let alone actually competing. But he was completely satisfied with just, running around. He was excited. And a lot of his teammates encouraged him because he's having a great time. May as well, right? So there was another fellow who was on the track and field team. And this guy was an all-around athlete. I think he was actually in every sport. Sometimes there's two sports going on at the same time and you can't quite do both of them. But I think somehow he adjusted his schedule that he could actually do like two different things at once where, somehow the days off would mesh up and he could actually, do these. I don't know if he was in every single sport because we had a lot of sports. There was football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, track and field, soccer, so many things. So this is junior high. This kid was great at everything, this other kid. And when you compete in school, if you accrue enough points, means if you win enough times or place enough times, you get an accumulation of some points. And if you get enough points, you get a letter from your school. It's like a letter. If you get even more points, you get a sweater. So you get the Letterman sweater. If you get more, you get a Letterman jacket. So it's a jacket with the letter. This kid had so many letters in so many different events, right? And so when it was the end of the track and field season, and it was the time to award, all of these letters and other awards, this all-around athlete, since he had so many letters already, he decided to give his letter to this special needs kid, right? All heart. It was a class act. The kid, he knew that he didn't really need to have this, but this other kid actually deserved it because he was so enthusiastic about it. So this is an example of someone who was conquered by affection, right? Not by competition, by affection. He saw that this kid wasn't bothered by the fact that he never even qualified for a single. He had 0 points. You need a lot to get a letter. But that kid very proudly wore his Letterman jacket for the rest of the year, and he earned it. He didn't earn it by accruing points, but he earned it by affection, right? So when we see something like this, or when we hear about something like this, It's uplifting, right? It's classy. And this is the opulence that's known as renunciation, right? Renunciation doesn't mean that you don't have anything. It means that you have other opulences, but you're not attached to them. You're detached, right? And so that's how it's sometimes hard to understand how renunciation is an opulence, because sometimes when we think of renunciation, we just mean someone that doesn't have anything, right? No, it means that someone that's not attached to the things that they have, because they understand that no, everything is Krishna's. And but Krishna is also, even though everything is his, he's detached from it. He would rather give to others than accept for himself. So this example of this class act that my classmate did, although it's attractive, it doesn't compare to Krishna's class acts, right? Sure, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees who are serving him favorably. And of course, when I say reciprocates, his idea of reciprocation is way beyond what we can imagine. And we've talked about this many times of Sudama Brahmana. He gave a palm full of rice that was wrapped up in a torn cloth. And he got like a whole palace and servants and clothes and healthy body and jewelry and all these things for so it doesn't seem reciprocal in one sense. But Krishna's idea, as I mentioned before, was that Sudama, he actually didn't possess that rice. He had to beg for it from somebody else. So in Krishna's eyes, since Sudama was giving him something that he didn't even possess, that Krishna should have also given him something that he didn't possess, but he possesses everything. So Krishna's idea of reciprocation is, it'll blow our minds. We do one small thing for him, but he sees it as this grand gesture, and he rewards accordingly. But not only does he reciprocate with his pure devotees who are serving in a favorable way, but he also reciprocates with those who are unfavorably absorbed in thoughts of him, right? And that brings us to today's verse. Chetiraj, Shishupal, he hated Krishna. He didn't love Krishna. He hated him. It says it right in the verse. He's super envious. Anything he could do to insult Krishna, he did on purpose because he hated him. But he attained liberation, right? And everyone saw it. He was so envious of Krishna that he was hurling insults at him over and over and over in public. But since Shishupal's mind was always filled with thoughts of Krishna, he was always thinking of Krishna, which is what we're told to do. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. Everything else in Shastra is based on these two ideas. So he was always thinking of Krishna. He was never forgetting about Krishna. He was just very unfavorable. But since he was following that simple rule to always remember Krishna, he got that benediction, higher than any material benediction, right? Now that class act, that puts all other class acts that we've ever experienced or heard about to complete shame, right? Even giving like it mentions in the verse, you can't actually be a bona fide enemy of Krishna. It's impossible. But even if you see yourself that way and you're completely competing with him and you're throwing all of this hate and envy, you still get the highest benediction that can be had in this material world, which is to get out of the world, right? And that class act that he performed, so there's that class act that he did to Shishupal, right? But there's another class act that Krishna did that pertains to all of us. So for Shishupal, we could least appreciate it. I don't think any of us actually aspire to be hateful of Krishna to the point where, oh, maybe I can always think of him if I'm hating him. No, I hope that none of us are thinking in this way. So other than gaining inspiration from the fact that he gives benediction even to his enemies, he performs another class act, which is very similar to that one, for all of us, each and every single one of us. And for a very similar reason. We don't want to think that we have anything in common with Shishupal. but unfortunately we do. Because here's the deal. Each and every one of us wanted to live independently or separately from him, right? And so when we had that desire, when we exercised our free will in the wrong direction, desiring to be separate from Krishna, instead of actually making us separate from him, which would mean that we don't exist anymore, right? Because there's nothing that doesn't exist that's outside of Krishna. Instead of doing that, instead of blinking us out of existence, he expanded his own body, his own form. Of course, he doesn't have a material body, but he has a spiritual body. And so he expanded that and made this whole realm where countless rebellious living entities who have turned their backs on him are just doing all sorts of things trying to forget him, hurling insults one after another, with all sorts of people present with Krishna right there. He's everywhere. He's expanded himself. And everything that we're using to try to forget him is just part of him, right? That's a class act. Someone who, with all these countless people, countless eternal fragments of himself, declaring their independence from him, and he expands his own body to give us all a believable illusion of independence with absolutely no trace of ill will toward us, right? And he's observing us in our best attempts to forget him, patiently waiting for us to turn back to him, right? It doesn't get classier than that. So back to today's verse then, if we truly see him for who he is, it won't even be a question of whether we might have independent control. We'll know that everything, he is everything, right? And we are part of him. We don't have independent control. That's the relationship. That's the sambandha. We can deny it or we can accept it. And either way, he is absolutely fine with it, right? If we're denying it, that's fine. So that means that we're in this particular section of his realm, where he's patiently waiting for us to regain our proper identity, right? And redirect our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric. And when we do so, then we live in the other realm. We're always with him. He's always with us. And he never has any ill will, even though time after time, moment after moment, we're doing thing after thing to forget about him, right? And all of the things that we're using to forget about him, they're just him, right? It's wild. So when we finally understand what our relationship is with him, and we stop trying to fight against that relationship, stop trying to compete with him, then we will automatically fall in love with him because he is the absolute best of everything, right? The reason we become obsessed with or infatuated with certain things is because we think it's the best of something. Some people think football is the best sport. So they watch all of the different teams and they learn all of the different strategies and plays, and then they go out and practice themselves and they try to become the best of what they think has all of the value, right? And each of these things that have some value, it's actually just Krishna's value, right? Because each of these things are actually Krishna. So the things that we're infatuated, we're obsessed with in this material world, it's actually we're infatuated with the idea that's there. We see the reflection of Krishna's potency. That's what we're attracted to. But unfortunately, instead of that attraction inspiring us to learn how to properly use that thing, that opulence, instead of that, we use our attraction to figure out how to exploit the thing, how to see how it can benefit me the most, not how it's meant to properly be engaged. So it's not that there's a problem with understanding that something is opulent. It's a problem with trying to take it and use it in an unauthorized way. And that means to satisfy me, not to satisfy Krishna. So he's the best of everything. Everything that we see that we're attracted to, it's him, right? So if we can see him without the curtain, right? If we can dissolve away the various modes of material nature that are blinding us from reality, if we can shift our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric, to stop using our false ego and start using our real ego, which is identifying as the servant of Krishna. When we're able to successfully do that, then we will see Krishna as he is, and we will immediately be 100% head over heels in love with him. And it's automatic. It won't be something that we have to work with or aspire to. It happens automatically as soon as we actually understand who he is, what is his nature. He's so easy to fall in love with if we actually understand who he is. But we're so in love with ourselves and the idea of ourselves being independent from him that currently we're just covered from this. So again, all the things that we think we love in this world are just reflections of its potency. So when we actually come in contact with the real deal, that love will come naturally. And when that love is present, no one can tolerate separation from him, not even for a moment. We hear different stories of pure devotees experiencing a moment of separation, and it feels like an eternity. My favorite story, of course, we know the verse from Shikshastika, we understand that. But my favorite example of separation, story of separation from Krishna being just the most tragic thing ever, is the story of how Prem Sarovara was formed. There's a lake. I mean, it's in Braj, it's in Vrindavan, but it's not in Vrindavan, but it's in Vrindavan. If you're coming back from Varshan, you can visit this Prem Sarovara. Anyway, so there was this, it was just this nice kunj, and Krishna was there with Radharani, and they were lounging and talking and enjoying each other's company. And there was a bee that was flying around. And so one of Krishna's servants, he saw that there's this bee, and he thought, okay, this bee is gonna disturb these pastimes, right? So they shooed the bee away. And then he said, Madhu is gone, the bee is gone, right? And so Srimati Radharani, who's looking at Krishna, she knows he's there, but she heard Madhu is gone, and she knows Krishna as Madhu because he's very sweet. And so just the idea of Krishna being gone, even though he's right there, she's touching him, she's looking at him, she's listening to him. All of her senses, well, transcendental senses, are engaged in his presence. But just the idea that Madhu is gone, that Krishna could be gone, it made her start just crying torrents of tears, right? And then when Krishna saw Srimati Radharani crying, he got very upset. Why are you crying? He starts crying. And then that made her cry even more. And so they're just, both of them are just bawling. And there wasn't even any separation. There was just an idea of separation. And those tears filled up this lake, which is known as Prem Sarovara. You can go there now, and you can bathe in those holy waters. So let alone actual separation. Well, of course, there is really never any separation from Krishna because Krishna is everything, right? There's only the idea of separation. But not only this actual experience of separation is painful, but even the thought of separation is painful. Separation cannot be tolerated for a moment. Who could tolerate such a thing, right? This is what Uddhava is asking of Vidura. He who gives liberation to his enemy, how could you not fall in love with that person? And being in love with that person, how could one tolerate even a moment without him, right? So one of my favorite names of Krishna, and I think we have someone in here with that same name. Yeah, there he is, Prananath. The Lord of the life heirs. This means that Krishna, if we didn't have Krishna, we wouldn't be alive, right? He's our very reason for existence. He is our life and soul. So when we finally remember this, when we finally understand who he is, we will automatically fall in love with him. Of course, we'll have to also acknowledge who we are. But when we understand that relationship, that's sambandha, and we automatically will fall in love with him. And once that love is established, then even a moment of separation cannot be tolerated. Now, there's one more idea I'll talk about before we see if there are any other discussion topics. Some people think it's quite unfair that the gopis only had Krishna for a few short years. And then he was away. He lived till he was, what, 125 or something like that. He left when he was like 16 or younger. And, he said he'd be back. And these poor gopis are just sitting there in Vrindavan meditating on him. And he sends a messenger, okay, that was nice. But some people think, oh no, that must have been such torture for these gopis to be in such separation for such a long time. How can a loving Lord do such a thing to someone? But the point is that these gopis were completely absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And thinking of Krishna is actually not different than being with Krishna. And this idea of separation, again, there is no such thing as actual separation, but this idea of separation actually increased the attachment to Krishna. And when one increases that attachment, then when there is union again, it is so much more relishable, right? So some might think, well, no, this is absolute torture. But no, this experience has to be there to actually get the highest taste. And for some people, it's not worth it. And that's fine. They have other relationships with Krishna. Everyone is completely satisfied in their relationship with Krishna. But this idea of the concept, or we'll call it a concept of, or this idea of separation, it's a very powerful thing. So again, we've actually demanded this separation from Krishna. That's why we're here in the material world. But once we understand from mercy of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and our sincere desire to understand Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and we engage in this path of devotional service and make gradual advancement, we start performing the devotional service that's recommended in the Shastra. We start weeding out the bad habits that we have that are detrimental to devotional growth. We become steady, fixed in devotional service, where we're going to now tend to do more devotional activities than our material activities. Means that's just by consciousness. That's not just the actual activity. It means our intention, our focus in doing whatever we're doing. We'll be more geared toward doing it for Krishna and not doing it for ourselves. Then we'll actually get a taste. And as that taste increases, so that we'll actually like it, we'll do it more. Once that taste increases, not only will we like it, we'll be attached to it. We'll really need it. It's not that so when you have taste for something, you want it. When you're attached to it, you need it, right? And from there, the love blossoms and it grows. And that's where it becomes automatic, because we actually start seeing the true relationship between us and Krishna. We see how he acts, not only with his devotees, but with his enemies. How he acts with us, the people of the material world. Everything that he does is lovable, right? And so when we see that, again, by the mercy of Guru Sadhu Shastra and the Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the cleansing power of the holy name to help us distinguish reality from illusion, right? So we can actually see what is of value and how these valuable things are to be used properly. It'll be automatic, and we won't be able to tolerate separation for a moment. Okay, so let's stop there and see if there are any questions, comments, additions, further discussion, anything like that. Don't be shy. It looks like we have nothing, and that's okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Very, very nice class. Very purifying. And you are talking from Mayapur. I feel like you are giving us good vibration from the Mayapur. So purifying. I really like the whole class.
Mayapur is very merciful. Anything that is done in Mayapur is magnified. So thankfully, I was able to study Shastra in Mayapur for a lot of years. And so Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, very merciful, very, very merciful. So yes, there is certainly that aspect present.
Thank you very much for the class.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Charya Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Oh, Vinjavali too.
Oh, sorry. If
Go
anyone
ahead.
is, let them go ahead.
Thank you, Charachandra Prabhu. Very wonderful class. I looking so very much to the descriptions that you're explaining about longing for Krishna,
Me too.
and being in the missing Krishna that much, and it just made me think how, as we go through the process of sadhana bhakti, if we're not careful, we can very easily forget that is the goal of our devotion. And just kind of get into the day-to-day efforts of it and lose the idea that this union of Krishna, whether it's even through the process of separation, is really like the goal of what we're trying to achieve, is this complete Krishna consciousness. Can you just maybe speak to that just for a moment, about how do we not lose track of the goal in the execution of our day-to-day lives and service?
Great question, very important, and it applies to every single one of us. So, I mean, Srila Prabhupada has done a fantastic job of reminding us always in all of his books, and designing the program that we're meant to follow, and the rules and regulations. He's designed this. I mean, of course, this is through disciplic succession also, but he's presented that to us in such a way where if we do it, we're going to be less inclined to forget, right? So it's just a matter of actually doing it, right? We have to remain sincere, dedicated, and we have to whatever extent we can, follow the advice of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And if we consistently do that, then we'll grow, as I described. If we don't do that, we're essentially letting Krishna know that although we appreciate him, we're not quite ready for that, right? For that particular devotional growth. It means we're still the center. So keeping good association, regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam class, and then regularly studying the Shastras, taking the instructions of the Guru as one's life and soul. That's what our Srila Prabhupada did from his Srila Prabhupada. He was given the instruction. He took it as his life and soul because he learned from a previous Acharya, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that is what it means to become a devotee. So we have to at least understand these things. We may not be able to do them right now, but we have to at least understand them so we know that this is where we want to be at some point so that we can actually work toward it. The common thing I see these days is that we have a tendency to find loopholes and exceptions to rules and justify our lack of desire to actually fully engage in Christian service. This is what we tend to do. It's the material world. It's no surprise. And if we've done that in the past, don't worry about it. There's still hope for us, right? So we just have to continue to be sincere, determined, and take proper association. Try to get rid of those offenses. Chant with enthusiasm, sincerity, all of these things. So basically the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us, we have to follow it. If we do that, then properly with the proper motivation, then there's no question of forgetting it. I hope that answered that. Sita Devi, you also had your hand, or go ahead, say something else. Did you want to say something else, Dronacharya?
No, just wanted to thank you for that answer.
Okay, thanks. Sita Devi, you had your hand up, but then you put it down. Did you still want to add something?
No, it was it's okay. I kind of got my answer. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, Vindhyavali, what you wanted to say something to Mataji?
I think, Prabhu, when you said that the value of movement association, that reminded me one sloka, Tulya nama plavena pi na sarkam na punarjabraham. Bhagavat Sangha Sangasya Vrityan Kim Tashisha. So which Vishnugada Prabhu taught us. So that says the value of movements association with devotees actually of Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets of liberation. And from matter and what to speak of worldly benediction in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. So, really, devotees association, and I feel this morning class every day, and I don't know how much I'm grasping from this, but I want to sit and listen to. So that's what my happiness is here.
Good.
And when we listen to like today's class and discussion, when I listen to all that, that gives me so much happiness. And I cannot explain that. That I don't get in gossiping or anything with anybody. But this thing, I don't know how I get, why Krishna gives me this. But I'm not a book reading person. I'm just listening.